Hello everyone, welcome to my Affliction Warlock DPS guide for patch 11.0. If you're looking to dominate the DPS charts as an Affliction Warlock, you're in the right place. I'll walk you through everything you need to know, including talent builds, rotations, tier sets, secondary stats, and how to optimize your gameplay. So, let's dive in. First up, let's talk about the tier set bonuses introduced in patch 11.0. These bonuses are a big deal and can significantly boost your damage output. The 2-piece bonus increases the damage of Malefic Rapture by 5% and gives it a 10% higher critical strike chance. The 4-piece bonus takes it further by giving Malefic Rapture a chance to increase the damage of your key dots, Agony, Corruption, and Unstable Affliction, by 15% for 8 seconds after casting it. These bonuses make Malefic Rapture an essential part of your rotation, so keep that in mind as we go through the rest of the guide. Now, let's discuss secondary stats, which are crucial for maximizing your damage. Here's the priority order you should aim for. Crit. This is your top priority. Increases your chance to land critical hits, which can really amplify your damage. Mastery. Boosts your dot damage directly, making it the second most important stat. Haste. It speeds up your casting and increases the tick rate of your dots, which means more damage over time. Versatility. This stat provides a smaller boost to your damage and also reduces the damage you take, but it's the least important of the 4. Remember, while these priorities are generally solid, it's always a good idea to run your own simulations, also known as sims, to figure out the best stats for your specific gear and setup.
All right, let's get into the meat of the guide, the talent builds. In patch 11.0, Affliction Warlocks have 2 primary builds to choose from: Soul Harvester and Hellcaller. Each has its own strengths, so let's break them down. Demonic Soul. A demonic entity now inhabits your soul, allowing you to detect if a soul shard has a succulent soul when it's generated. A succulent soul empowers your next Malefic Rapture, increasing its damage by 20 and unleashing your demonic soul to deal an additional shadow damage. Necrolite Teachings. Shadow Bolt and Drain Soul damage increased by 20%. Nightfall increases the damage of Shadow Bolt and Drain Soul by an additional 50%. For a defensive option, Option 1, Friends in Dark Places. Dark Pact now shields you for an additional 50% of the sacrificed health. I like this node, as it just makes Dark Pact stronger. Option 2 is called Gore-Bound Fortitude. You always gain the benefit of Soul Burn when consuming a health stone, increasing its healing by 30% and increasing your maximum health by 20% for 12 seconds. This node could be helpful, as you could consider dropping the talent Soul Burn in the class tree. Wicked Reaping. Damage dealt by your demonic soul is increased by 10%. Soul Anathema. Unleashing your demonic soul bestows a fiendish entity unto the soul of its targets, dealing around 127% of spell power of shadow damage over 10 seconds. If this effect is reapplied, any remaining damage will be added to the new Soul Anathema. And another option to choose from. First off, Shared Fate. When you kill a target, its tortured soul is flung into a nearby enemy for 3 seconds. This effect inflicts shadow damage to enemies within 10 yards. This ability deals reduced damage beyond 8 targets. The other option is Feast of Souls. When you kill a target, you have a chance to generate a soul shard that is guaranteed to be a succulent soul. Quietus. Soul Anathema damage increased by 25% and is dealt 20% faster. Consuming Nightfall activates Shared Fate or Feast of Souls. Demoniac's Fervor. Your demonic soul deals 100% increased damage to targets affected by your unstable affliction. Then you get to choose between Eternal Servitude and Gorefiend's Resolve. Eternal Servitude reduces the cooldown of Fel Domination by 90 seconds. Your pet shouldn't be dying within 3 minutes, so I would go for Gorfien's Resolve. Targets resurrected with Soulstone resurrect with 40% additional health and 80% additional mana. Satael's Volition. Corruption deals damage 25% faster and Haunt grants Nightfall. Shadow of Death. Your Soul Rot spell is empowered by the demonic entity within you, causing it to grant 3 soul shards that each contain a succulent soul. Next up, some flexibility in your class tree talent options. Fiendish Stride. It reduces the damage dealt by Burning Rush by 10%, and you run 20% faster. This is really nice in Mythic Plus, because you are moving a lot, making sure you can keep up with the fast-running tanks out there. You can swap this out for potentially Lifeblood. When you use a Health Stone, gain 4% leech for 20 seconds, or maybe a Beeswalker. When you use Demonic Circle Teleport or your Gateway, you reduce all damage taken by 4%. For Mythic Plus, I would also recommend taking Shadow Fury to stun all enemies within 10 yards for 3 seconds, and Dark Fury that reduces the cooldown of Shadow Fury by 15 seconds, and it increases its radius by 2 yards. In raids, you could drop these 2 talents for sure. You could drop Ichor of Devils to accomplish this if you can trust your healer enough to sacrifice more health when you use Dark Pact, as Dark Pact sacrifices 20% of your health to shield you for 200% of the sacrificed health. Last but not least, you could also consider dropping the Soulburn Capstone. If you don't often use this in combination with Teleport, Drain Life. If you don't use these abilities a lot, you might as well spend it somewhere you will use it. Here are all the best Affliction Warlock talent tree builds for both raids and Mythic Plus. This is the Hellcaller single target talent build, and it favors a few talents which directly increase wither damage, such as Sacrilash's Dark Strike. Hellcaller Affliction is a strong option in Mythic Plus due to your 1-minute cooldown. While it may not be as bursty as Soul Harvester, it does have a strong and consistently damaging profile. The Soul Harvester single target build is, as the name implies, stronger overall in single target damage, but a bit less mobile than his Hellcaller counterpart. Soul Harvester AOE. This version of Affliction brings good area of effect damage, but also single target burst, thanks to your Demonic Soul and Nightfall procs.
The Soul Harvester build is all about maximizing the potential of Nightfall procs. These procs empower Drain Soul and synergize with other abilities to push your damage to the next level. The key mechanic here is something called Succulent Souls, which grants extra damage to Malefic Rapture during specific windows, especially when you're using Soul Rot. This build really shines during cooldown windows where you can combine Soul Rot and Dark Glare to pump out huge damage. Soul Harvester single target rotation. Pre-pull. Make sure you've applied Haunt, Agony, Unstable Affliction, and Corruption. Then pop your key cooldowns like Phantom Singularity, Soul Rot, and Dark Glare, along with any trinkets. Use Drain Soul to max out Shadow's Embrace. Once those are up, start spamming Malefic Rapture while keeping your dots refreshed. Soul Harvester AOE Rotation. Precast Seed of Corruption to get Corruption up on all targets. Vile Taint. Haunt the main target. Apply Unstable Affliction. Cast Soul Rot, Dark Glare, and your on-use trinkets and potions. Finally, start spamming Malefic Rapture during these cooldowns. And then proceed to your normal rotation, refreshing your dots.
In Hellcaller, you replace Corruption with a beefed-up version by the name of Wither. Wither is Shadow Flame damage, and thus gets bonus damage from both Shadow and Fire modifiers. Wither, like the spell it replaces, is a largely passive effect, and doesn't affect gameplay too much. Hellcaller also brings the ability Malevolence. This spell provides us with a 20-second haste buff every minute to enhance our burst window. Malevolence also gives us a 20-second buff that each time we spend shards, Wither gains 1 stack, further consolidating that burst window every minute.
The core mechanic of this build is stacking and collapsing Wither to maximize your damage output.
But before we deep dive into the rotation, let's check out Hellcaller hero talents first. Next up, the hero talents. Hellcaller Wither bestows a vile malediction upon the target, burning the sinew and muscle of its host, dealing 27,600 Shadow Flame damage immediately, and an additional huge amount of Shadow Flame damage over 18 seconds. Xalan's Ferocity. Fire damage dealt by your spells and abilities is increased by 2%, and your fire spells gain 10% more critical strike chance from all sources. Next, pick your poison. Curse of the Satire. Curse of the Weakness. Empowered to increase the time between an enemy's attacks by 20% and the casting time of all spells by 30% for 2 minutes. Aura of Enfeeblement. While Unending Resolve is active, enemies within 30 yards are affected by Curse of Tongues and Curse of Weakness at 100% effectiveness. For me personally, I would choose the latter because I tend to use Unending Resolve more often than I do Curse of the Weakness. Mark of Xavius. Wither damage increased by 25%. Blackened Soul deals 2% increased damage per stack of Wither. Blackened Soul. Spending soul shards on damaging spells will further corrupt enemies affected by your Wither, increasing its stack count by 1. Each time Wither gains a stack, it has a chance to collapse, consuming a stack every 1 second to deal 59% of spell power Shadow Flame damage to its host until 1 stack remains. Now a choice between Hate Fury Rituals. Wither deals 30% increased periodic damage, but its duration is 15% shorter. This one sims better single target. And Bleak Heart Tactic. Wither damage increased 20%. When Wither gains a stack from Blackened Soul, it has a chance to gain an additional stack. Sims better on AOE. Seeds of their Demise. After Wither reaches 8 stacks, or when its host reaches 20% health. Wither deals 42,000 of Shadow Flame damage to its host every 1 second until 1 stack remains. When Blackened Soul deals damage, you have a chance to gain Tormented Crescendo. Xalan's Cruelty. Shadow damage dealt by your spells and abilities is increased by 2%, and your shadow spells gain 10% more critical strike chance from all sources. Zevrim's Resilience. Dark Pact heals you for 85,000 every second while active. Illhoof's Design. Sacrifice 10% of your maximum health. Soul Leech now absorbs an additional 15% of your maximum health. Overall, not a fan of the talent. I would go for Zevrim. Mark of Pertharn. Critical strike damage dealt by Wither is increased by 10%. Wither has a chance to gain a stack when it critically strikes. Stacks gained this way do not activate Blackened Soul. Is a nice increase to get. Last but not least, Malevolence. The capstone talent. Dark magic erupts from you and corrupts your soul for 20 seconds, causing enemies suffering from your Wither to take 182,000 of Shadow Flame damage and increase its stat count by 6. While corrupted, your haste is increased by 8% and spending soul shards on damaging spells grants 1 additional stack of Wither. Basically, this provides you with a buff, where Malevolence grants Malefic Rapture, 1 additional stack of Wither to targets affected by unstable affliction.
For the Hellcaller single target rotation, pre-cast Haunt, then cast Agony and Unstable Affliction. Wither, and use Shadow Bolt or Drain Soul to stack Shadow's Embrace. When you're ready for your cooldowns, use Phantom Singularity, Soul Rot, Dark Glare, and then pop Malevolence before unloading with Malefic Rapture. The Hellcaller AOE Rotation is similar, but you'll focus more on spreading Wither stacks and using Malevolence to amplify your dot damage. Precast Seed of Corruption to get Corruption up on all targets. Vile Taint. Haunt the main target. Apply Unstable Affliction, cast Soul Rot, Dark Glare and your on-use trinkets and potions, and then pop Malevolence before unloading with Malefic Rapture, and then proceed to your normal rotation, refreshing your dots. Also, make sure you enter these cooldown windows with fewer than 3 soul shards. This way, you won't waste any resources since you'll be generating 3 shards during this window no matter what. So, when should you use these builds? Soul Harvester is your go-to for single target situations. Its synergy with Nightfall procs and Succulent Souls makes it incredibly strong when you're focusing down one target. Now, if you're diving into Mythic or dealing with heavy AoE, Hellcaller generally pulls ahead. Its consistent wither damage and powerful cooldowns like Malevolence make it a beast in sustained AoE situations. Now, let's talk about fishing for tier set procs. This is where you can really push your damage even further. I highly recommend using weak auras to visually track and manage these procs. A key tip is to always hold Phantom Singularity for each Soul Rot window. This ensures you're optimizing your damage output during your big cooldown windows. Those happen every 2 minutes. Your goal is to dump as many Malefic Raptures as possible. For the smaller 1-minute windows, pair Phantom Singularity with Soul Rot and keep spending those shards efficiently. So, there you have it. Both the Soul Harvester and Hellcaller builds bring something unique to the table. Soul Harvester is your pick for single target encounters, thanks to its strong shard generation and Nightfall synergies, while Hellcaller shines in multi-target and AoE situations, especially in Mythic content. Keep an eye on any tuning changes from Blizzard, as these could affect the optimal builds and strategies. And remember, running personalized sims is key to fine-tuning your gear and talent choices for the best possible performance in any encounter. Thanks for watching, and if you found this guide helpful, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Happy casting!